Well, let's talk to our guests here in the studio. Owen Paterson, whatever this third way is, do you agree we can expect it to be pretty far from your ideal Brexit?
Well, my idea of Brexit is the idea that all of us around this table were elected on, which is we were 85% of the votes in the general election and 63% of MPs represent seats voted to leave the customs union, leave the single market and leave the remit of the ECJ. So we are caricatured as ideologues and hard Brexiteers. All we want is for the Cabinet to sit round a table and agree to deliver what was promised on the manifesto that certainly Ed and I sat on. And that is to leave those three things. Right. We should be offering the EU reciprocal free trade with zero tariffs. And if they won't accept that, then we go to world trade arrangements, which tiny little countries like the United States, China, India struggle to trade under.
Well, do you agree with that, Ed? Is that your view?
Well, both parties lost the last election, as Owen well knows. Neither party won a majority on their manifesto, and we're not, as a Tory party, implementing huge swathes of our manifesto because we don't have a majority to do so. And it's also a slightly complete red herring point. What we are discussing seriously is what we're going to do about Brexit and how we're going to deliver a Brexit that doesn't cost people's jobs and see businesses go under. And when Owen compares us to the United States, it's like you're going through a divorce and a single person says to you, well, look, I'm living perfectly well on my own, but we are getting a divorce. We have been with the European Union for 45 years. You can't simply walk away overnight without some kind of impact. I would respect the Brexiteers more if they said, this is a fight for independence. We want to be independent from the European Union. It will cost our economy. In the short term, in the medium term, it will cost our economy, but we think it is the right thing to do, and that's what we're going to campaign for. What I can't stand is this fantasy that there will be no economic impact at all if we simply walk away from the European Union.
Honestly, I have to strongly disagree with that. Firstly,
of course you do. That's why we're on the programme together.
You cannot dismiss the election, a North and the Labour Party. Now, Theresa May, forget the seats, she got second largest number of votes since John Major. There was a vote strongly to endorse the referendum
50%
result.
50% of this country voted to stay in the European Union. So we can all look at we can all look at election results. It's a complete bit of sophistry, as you well know. Right. What are you going to do? What are you going to tell people if it's going to cost people their jobs? Your hard Brexit.
Here, I'm demanding an extra minute.
Yeah,
you've got it. You've got it.
That's how it works in the House of Commons. That's how it works.
Exactly. So I believe the integrity of the whole political structure is at stake here. If we don't deliver what was voted for in the referendum and the general election, there will be massive disillusion. On the point of prosperity, there are senior economists who see an 8% reduction in cost of living. That's a £2,300 bonus to every single family in this country. It is complete rubbish, all this project fear. You troop on...
Were business wrong then when they made that intervention?
They're producers, and the producers are very interested in the 12% of the UK economy concentrating on exports to the EU. What about the 88% that doesn't get involved in that? What about the consumers? You never ever have the consumers on these programmes. They will be better off. Every business will be better off because they'll be able to buy materials free of tariffs from around the whole world.
Right, Rosanna?
Nobody talks about that.
I completely disagree with that. I don't think that anybody voted to be worse off. I don't think that businesses want to be worse off.
But he says they're not going to be worse off.
I believe they will be. I don't believe that the constituents that I represent will be better off. I see local businesses where I am worse off, and I think that this Conservative Party are taking us off a Brexit cliff. Theresa May can't get her cabinet to agree. Vultures are circling around for her job. No one has the guts to challenge her until we're well and truly off the Brexit cliff. And even Graham Brady has come out trying to get people to act peacefully and let's get through this. And I'm very interested to see what this third way is going to be. But I'd say we're running out of time.
Do you think it's a softening, the third way?
No, I think it's reality. I mean, we find this extraordinary position where Conservative MPs are attacking business. You know, we've got a Marxist leader of the Labour Party who can now stand up at PMQs and attack the Conservatives for being anti-business. I saw one Conservative MPs attacking Airbus because it was EU-based. You know, nothing about the billions of pounds that Airbus has invested in the UK economy.
And
the thousands of highly skilled jobs.
But do you think... Right, well, on that basis, do you think Theresa May will now go, it's been suggested, for a deal that means that the UK stays in the single market or very close to it on goods?
Well, this is where we have two arguments, in a sense, because you see all these Brexiteers who, during the campaign, argued that we would have access to the single market. The Remainers and the Brexiteers have valid views which they articulate. What is unacceptable are the Brexiteers writing open letters to the Prime Minister saying, you're out if you don't do exactly what we say. She's trying to get a practical deal, and they should support her until they see what she comes back with.
And Owen Paterson, isn't your insistence on Brexit purity, as you see it, the things that Theresa May promised in that Lancaster House speech, in danger of risking the whole process? You'll end up with none of what you want in the way that William Hague has written this morning. I think we can have a look at what he said in The Telegraph. You know, if ardent Brexiteers push too hard, they will end up without their main objective. If there's no agreement this week on a plan for customs arrangements, the Commons will be much more likely to vote in the near future to stay in the customs union in its entirety. Is he right?
Well, we massively back her. She's delivered Article 50. She's delivered last week.
But
We got
Jacob
royal
Rees-Mogg
assent
threatened
for
that the government would
withdrawal.
fall unless she stuck to what you said.
She is reminding the government and the cabinet who meet this weekend that they must stick to the manifesto commitments, which both main parties were elected on.
And if they don't, and if she doesn't,
thin.
well, hang on. If she doesn't, though, Owen, and this is a realistic outcome that she doesn't stick to it. What happens then? What should Brexiteer cabinet ministers do?
If we don't deliver this, forget the cabinet, forget the two main parties, forget the government. There will be the most damaging, really long-lasting hit on the integrity of the whole political process. How can you? I mean, Ed's good friend Dave gave us the right to have a vote in the referendum. To his horror and George Osborne, despite all their efforts, the result came up the wrong way. We then have a general election result. We've now got the withdrawal bill through. So the people are broadly very still much behind the government, as we saw in the local elections. If that is not delivered now, what is the point in voting? If your politicians say, we're too grand, you know, we're part of the establishment.
My much better friend, Michael Gove, campaigned for Brexit, and in the process dismissed all the experts who said it would be bad for Brexit. So it's interesting to see Owen suddenly cite unnamed experts saying Brexit is going to make us better off. Do you genuinely believe we're going to be better off if we have the hard, cliff-edge WTO Brexit that you seem to be campaigning for? Or are you going to use your position to campaign for a Brexit that is realistic and will save people's jobs?
I just don't accept this caricature, Ed. You and I stood on a manifesto of leaving the customs union, leaving the single market, and leaving the remit of the ECJ.
And the Prime Minister said she wants some kind of customs arrangement. Are you going to support her on that?
And we've said we would like to see reciprocal free trade with zero tariffs. If you look at the history of the 19th century, when the UK went alone and we had zero tariffs, we saw the most spectacular increase in growth.
All right.
And you would have that here.
And Jacob Rees-Mogg said it cost a Tory Prime Minister his job and kept the Tories out for 30 years. As he said in his article about Robert Peel.
Because he
but
actually
it was the right thing to do.
Because his own party at the time was
that's right. So maybe the party should get behind the Prime Minister.
But look at the key point is look at the impact of zero tariffs. All our constituents, and I totally disagree with, all our poorest constituents who spend a disproportionate amount on food and clothing, etc., they will be better off.
Right, well, this is an example of what is going on in terms of the debate within the Tory party, but it isn't just the Conservative Party. Rosanna, you voted against triggering Article 50, which was against the position of the Labour leadership, but you kept your shadow ministerial post. Why was that, by the way? You managed to get away with it, others didn't. They got sacked.
Well, I was very clear. First of all, I wasn't in Parliament. I wasn't an MP at the time where MPs voted to have a referendum. I also came in on a by-election where the week before the EU referendum, I stood on people's doorsteps and said, I have what it takes to represent you, to stand up for Tooting, give me your vote. I felt I absolutely had to deliver on that. My constituency voted overwhelmingly to remain. I believed that Brexit would be worse for my constituents. And so I stuck to my principles. I stuck to standing up for my community. I voted against triggering Article 50. And I phoned Jeremy and I had a very grown-up conversation. And he was very understanding about the issue.
And he listened to you. What about the idea then of a second referendum? If you are going to represent your constituents, and many of them would like a people's vote, they'd like a chance to vote on the deal, do you back them?
Personally, my constituents, along with myself, were deeply disappointed that we had a Prime Minister that worked so hard to ensure that Parliament didn't get a final say.
But what would But Unite and its General Secretary, Len McCluskey, are debating... they're debating this idea of backing a second referendum. Do you back a second referendum?
Well, if a vote goes out to the local Tooting community and they say that that's what they would like, I will listen. But right now that hasn't happened. So,
but should the Labour Party now be considering it? You've obviously made it very clear where you stand in terms of Remain, and you would have liked to have seen the UK remain as part of the EU. You voted against triggering Article 50. That logic then dictates that you would be in favour of another referendum or a vote on the deal.
I fundamentally stand by the Labour Party, who, although they are a broad church in terms of opinion, are working hard to ensure that we have workers' rights protected, that our businesses are not worse off, that our consumers are protected, that we have access to a single market and that we create a customs
So should Jeremy
union.
Corbyn, should the Labour leadership back a second referendum, yes or no?
If he wants to back a second referendum, I will support him in that.
And would you guide him to that?
He is guided by his own team, and if he wants to ask me my opinion, I'd be very happy to sit down and have a coffee with him and talk about it.
All right. Thank you very much, Owen Paterson.